Tell us the story of why Exit Forward exists.
Okay. Well, I guess before you go forward, you have to go backwards. So I built Dilate over 14 years with the help of some pretty spectacular crew, you included. And throughout the journey, I was always in service of someone. So in the early days, it was serving those small businesses. As the business grew, we started to serve different types of businesses. So it might be the business owner, the marketing manager. And then as I hired more people and I stepped back from the tools, I was then in the service of my team. And then after that, my team started to level up, and we brought in people within the business to manage the people. So then I had less touch points until eventually, as you said, you sacked me, which is a good thing. That's the tongue-in-cheek version of that. And I got a bit lost for a while. I wasn't in service of anyone besides, like, the last people that I was in service of was probably the leadership team and the shareholders. And then when I stopped being operational, I didn't have anyone that I was in service of. And I was about to do a trip, and I met a tradesman at the back end of our caravan where he was helping me put the hitch on. He'd been doing some work for me. And he said to me, "How are you able to take this time off and have the business still run and grow?" And it was in that moment that it was just like, I can still be of service to someone. There's a whole heap of people out there, specifically founders, that want to know how to get from A to B. It's probably A to Z. It was a case of knowing that I could still be of service to those founders who want to not necessarily exit their business, but they want to plan to get their time back. Because what happens is you think you hire people and you get your time back. And that's not the case. People actually take more time, not less.
Yeah.
So you end up becoming a bit of a slave to your business if you don't really know those key things to do. And they're simple things. You know, you start, like I said to you many times, you start with 2 pieces of paper. On the left-hand side, you write all the things that you don't like doing. And on the right-hand side, you write all the things you do like doing. And the first thing you start delegating is what's on the left. And they seem simple in theory, but until you go through the process and practice them and do them on the daily, you end up getting stuck behind the wheel.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time doing the stuff that you don't love doing.
Yeah. And you're consciously just looking after the business day to day, and you're not really thinking about what the bigger picture here is.
Exactly.
What's the end goal look like?
Spot on. And also, you aren't allowing other people to lead and make decisions because you're the captain.
Yeah.
So it's about finding, other people to be the captain and to champion that brand.
Yep. That's awesome. So the big problem, I guess, you saw for business owners, what were they facing? And I guess, knowing that, how does that sort of, hang on, let me ask that again. What's the big problem you saw business owners facing that made you want to build this?
I think I've sat in not this room, but those rooms and other conference rooms with thousands of businesses over the years. And that gives me an innate ability to understand the challenges that founders face. But they always say, build a business with a problem that you're solving for yourself. And Exit Forward was what I needed back when I was going through it to make that process smoother. So realistically, I've built something that I needed because I know that there's going to be others out there who are going to need it. So I think that the problems that they're really facing are just a lack of understanding of how to get from A to Z and what tools and resources and support and guidance, I think, is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered that.
No, I think so. I think it's like, obviously you don't know what you don't know. And if you've got someone that can help you understand what you're about to go through and sort of how to navigate and get the best outcome for you, then, that's probably beneficial, right?
And I don't expect this to be right for every business. Like, I'm not going to go out there and say, this is perfect product market fit. I don't need it to be. I'm looking for a small number of founders that gel and resonate with what we're putting out into the world. And that's going to be enough to be able to work in a bespoke manner to really carve something out that is a win-win, beneficial to them, beneficial to us, beneficial to their team, beneficial to their clients or their products or their services. The whole ecosystem needs to be better as a result of us coming into play. Otherwise, we just won't put our hand up for the job.
Yep. Love that. All right. So what's the first challenge most founders have when they think about leading their business?
A lack of, I guess, a sense of losing their identity, because anyone who's had some level of success in business has made sacrifices, and all those chinks in your armor become part of you. You carry them, you put a lot of these problems that you're facing on the daily on your back, and you run forward with them. And like, I know for me, one of the hardest things of stepping out of Dial 8 and into Exit Forward was I felt like I was having to let go of the relationships. And that's just not the case. There's the relationships and the work, and you're not the work that you do. And you are able to step forward into something else. And I always say the best way to step out of any business is to create almost like a mantra, which is like a stone in the pond. It's something to step to, and you're never supposed to stay there, but it's a place that you can rest between the identity of who you were and the identity of who you're going to become. And I think that's a really good way to look at it, is to make sure that you don't have to, you can have 1 foot on the shore, 1 foot on the stone, and then you step when you're ready. It's not a rushed process, which if you go through a normal traditional broker and you make the decision to sell, you might not be emotionally, and your soul might not be ready to actually make that choice. You might be burnt out and you go, yeah, put it on the market. And then you look back and have regrets. So this for us is about slowing the process down and making sure not only you're ready, but the business is ready, your people are ready, your leaders are ready, and that it benefits everyone, again, in the ecosystem.
Yeah. Beautiful. Love that. So what happens when someone doesn't plan their exit properly?
Well, in my case, I was very lucky. My accountant at the time saved my ass, because I was going to list and sell the business back in 2018, and you came down here and told me I was selling too early, and we went on this massive, incredible, crazy journey that I couldn't have connected those dots, looking forward. But I think the thing is, you miss out on possibilities. You miss out on what it could be. You miss out on going too early, or not getting it done in the right way, that you have to go back to work, or you have to, I always think of life as like painting a picture, like an art, or like storytelling. And you've got this life arc where it starts, you're born, and then it goes through your career, and then it comes down. And I want to know that when I get to the end of my life, I've painted the best picture and I have no regrets in the way I've done that. And I guess for every founder out there that might be listening to this, I would say, make sure that you're trying to take into consideration who you're going to be in the future, not just who you are right in this moment. Because right in this moment, you could be burnt out, stressed out, and there might be the difference between a 4-week holiday versus selling your business. And that's a huge misstep if you don't get it right. So I think at least using someone as a sounding board and going through the process in a non-committive way to just feel if it's right for you, and take your time, and don't make a decision to sell your business in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It should be at least 6 months that you consider that decision before you sell, because as I said, who you are today and who you are in 6 months and 12 months, you're going to evolve and you're going to change. So
yeah,
I think that's the biggest thing that people get it wrong. They say, sell too early, sell for the wrong reasons, sell to the wrong people, use the wrong people, and just generally don't truly consider what's on the other side. Because I guarantee you, if you're just doing it for the liquidity side of things, you can have a massive hole that you fall into on the side of that money hitting your account, because the liquidity side is one of the smallest pieces of doing a transaction. There's a whole emotional purpose, values side of thing, that needs to happen on the other side of a transition, and you need to be ready for that.
Yep.
The emotional bit.
Yep. You put so much into your business along the way. Like you want to, obviously there's the liquidity side of it, but then there's also just knowing that it's going to be in good hands, or knowing that your clients, are going to get what you've worked so hard to give them over the years.
Firsthand with me. I come in here to the office, on the couple of days a week to work on this with you, and I still see things. You know what I mean? I still see things that could be improved or bettered, and I try at a board level to try and give you, say, try this, try that, because I do still care about the business, and I think that's one thing I would also say to other founders. Don't think that you have to, like, everyone thinks it's either buy or sell. There's so many different types of transactions out there. Like the one that the journey that I've been on, 6 transactions since 2018. And I still have a passive investment in Dial8. When I say passive, I'm still obviously invested in making sure it's well run. But there's many ways to skin a cat. And I think that's the most important thing to understand, that you don't have to let go entirely unless you want to.
Yeah. And I guess if you are planning ahead, and you do get some advice from someone that has been through it before, there are different options. If you go to a broker, often it's a very black and white transaction. It's a common, that there's a value and then there's an earn-out period and then you say goodbye and that's it. Whereas if there are other options to you to consider, then those options might suit you and your goals better.
Yeah. And one thing I've learned over the last few years is the best acquirers are people that want you around, don't want you gone. If someone wants you gone in a quick time period from your business that you've run over years, that's a red flag. They should want a long-term relationship and partnership with you, because they should care about the people, the clients, the longevity of what they're buying as well. So, and to remember that you can do due diligence on both sides of the fence. If they're looking under your hood, make sure you look under their hood really well as well.
Yeah, that's a great one. Love that. And I guess in terms of how you might step back within a business, there's different options, right? So obviously, as the founder, you wore every hat once upon a time, and you probably along the way know which ones you like more than others. And with a proper planning and the proper sort of transition plan, you can actually find a pathway that you can step into something you enjoy doing, whether that's customer relationships or whether that's problem solving or even just giving advice and mentoring the people side of things. So there's lots of different ways to actually go about it.
And I've seen instances where people have sold their business and then gone to work for the company that did the acquisition and were able to actually just wear a single hat. So as opposed to being the founder that's juggling all the hats and juggling all the balls or spinning all the plates, they were able to do the sale. The person who did the acquisition came in and brought a certain level of, CEO and C-suite into the business and enabled them to do maybe business development or something that they really loved, the consulting with clients, and that bit which they found joyful, but all the other stuff that they didn't have that innate ability to do. So that's rewarding as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in that, they bring the best version of themselves. They don't bring the overwhelmed, stressed version. They're doing what they love, and they can really,
We've done something recently out there, and you can see it. You know what I mean in the acquisition that we just did recently. So
great. Cool. All right. Next one is when owners first come to you, what options are they usually considering?
One. That's back on my last point. They think that there's only one. They think that it's all or nothing. And they don't realize that there's strategic partnerships and mergers and receiving a part payment and going on and growing it further. A lot of the acquisitions that we're working on at the moment are actually more like partnerships where we take a big stake in the business, but then our goal is to make the stake that's left behind for that owner worth 4 times as much. So it's a win-win. They haven't lost anything. They've got some liquidity for their hard work. They've de-risked themselves, and then we get on board. We get on with it together, and we grow it together, being able to bring in a layer of, structure, process, systems, HR, and just mentoring that they might not have had doing it all by themselves, because it is lonely at the top.
Yep. And I guess with that partner, you can bring a different experience or different expertise.
Yep.
And, along the way, again, if you're planning ahead to where you're trying to get to, you've got someone that can actually help elevate and put your business in a better position when the time comes to actually look to find that partner.
Spot on. And we're looking at acquisitions now specifically. If I take the Exit Forward hat off and think about the work that I'm doing through Exit Forward for Dialate at the moment, we're looking for people as much as businesses. We're looking for a specific skill set or a specific makeup of person, because we've done it enough now to know what works and what doesn't.
What myths or misconceptions do they have about succession or selling?
I think the biggest one is that they'll be fulfilled, and that's the once they reach that hurdle or climb that mountain, that they'll be happy, and it's usually not the case. And if they're not sure what they're going to do after, it's actually the opposite. It's money, but we know what they say about money without purpose and money without direction. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is just make sure that they understand why they're doing it and what's waiting for them on the other side of the transaction. So I think that's the biggest misconception. And I think there's probably some more around the areas of like doing it through a broker. I just think you have to be very careful when you're getting someone to sell your business that's not specifically understanding your industry and spending enough time getting to know you and your business, because it's just dangerous. It takes a long time to get into a business and understand how it runs and the inner workings of that business to be able to position it for sale with the right business to make it successful. And I think if you rush that process and you go with a broker and they don't understand your business and they pair you with a business that's the wrong fit and they throw a big dollar figure at you and you bite on it, it might be good for your back pocket, but it's not going to be good for your people. It's not going to be good for your clients. It's not going to be good for the integration that needs to happen between those two businesses. And I think in the end of the day, you'll get the financial gain, but you'll suffer in the areas of looking back and realizing that your legacy is not as beautiful and that painting that you're painting isn't as aesthetically pleasing as you would have hoped it would be if you had done it right.
Love that. How do you help them see there's a smarter way to move forward?
I just talk through personal experience. I just show them the journey that I've had. I think it's quite a diverse, experience from, the transaction with you bringing someone in with a level of skill set that I didn't have, with the other side of the brain to me and the complementary relationship we had. And then sitting down and working out how to lift people up within the business, people who deserve it and people who have worked really, really hard. And then, then also when you're ready, going out and finding outside capital and looking at that as, you can get a sale, but you can also find outside capital that just wants to invest in your business and your success, which is what we did.
Yeah. So just having that experience, I guess.
Yeah.
Just helping them through the process.
Yeah.
It's, it's like having a business coach that's never run a business. It's similar with a broker. You've got a broker that's going to go through a process that they might not have actually have gone through themselves. So there's a level of context and, emotional understanding that's just lacking.
Yeah. Spot on.
Yeah. What makes Exit Forward's approach different from just hiring a broker?
Well, we're not a broker and we're not trying to be a broker. We're trying to be an independent consultant that has real world experience wrapped in a human partnership where you can come in here and see the way we've done things over 14 years and the outcomes that we've got, I guess you can see the lived experience. And I think that's the biggest difference, that lived experience, to be able to draw from not only the experience in business, but the thousands of businesses that we've sat in front of and helped over the years that we've been working in a creative digital marketing fashion as well. And a lot of that has been more consultative as well, and almost like business coaching and business advice over the years, because marketing is a big part of all facets of the business. You know, marketing affects sales, sales affects cash flow, revenue. It's the first go to market. It's your comm strategy. It ties into your PR. It's kind of a critical piece. And I think in that experience, if you're just looking at marketing and you're not looking at all the other facets, you're not really a good marketer.
Spot on. Love it. What values guide you in helping someone make a big life decision?
My story arc. So I want to make sure that when I look back on my life, I've been of service to people in a way that makes me proud, and I can say that I've always done the right thing, not the best thing for myself, but the right thing. Because it's very easy to put yourself ahead of the pack and to go, this is going to benefit me, and so I'll just get the sale. But the reality is, I'll say no, 9 times out of 10, if the fit's not there, and I truly don't think it's going to be a win-win, because I genuinely believe that it should be, and that a rising tide should always lift all boats or ships, whatever you want to say. But the point is that, if I have to take $1 out of someone's pocket and put it in mine to win, I've already lost.
How do you make the process feel safe and simple for someone who's nervous?
I always say it's kind of like dating. If you go into, and I've been with my wife for sort of like a long time, like a really long time. I can't even calculate. Over 15 years. And, if you go in, Timmy too keen in the early stages and try to rush the process, the person on the other side of that environment will feel it. So I would always say a long courting period. I also don't chase. So I don't ever want to be following someone up or inboxing them or hounding them for their business, because I never want them to be able to come back on me and say, you've pushed me into this, or you've made me feel, I want them to come when they're ready. So usually I take an educational approach, give them all the information, but it's up to them to knock on the door when they're ready. And it's a time game. And, much like the business development role I used to do at Dial 8, educate them so they understand, show them what other people aren't showing them, give them the information, but allow time for that to percolate through. And when they're ready, they'll knock on your door. And what's best is, even if they're not, they'll go off and they'll have a bad experience, and then they'll come back and then they'll be ready. So because sometimes you got to allow them to have that cheaper, quicker, faster route experience to go, that's not it.
Yeah. And would you say, in terms of the process that you would take someone through, is it a simple process? Talk to me a little bit more about the process that you might take someone through.
Yeah, great. So it's very like much a relation. It's you're entering into a relationship with someone, and it's not a short-term thing. So the first step would be pretty much like this. We'd get in a room, coffee shop, video call, whatever it might be. And I'm just trying to get to know them. I'm just trying to understand who they are, what's important to them, what are their value sets, what are their beliefs, how they've run their business. I want to hear their story, because without the story, you can't know all the things that's led from here to there. And I want to encourage them to look past that story and paint a convincing future for themselves. And I want them to tell me what that looks like. And if they can't, I guide and I help. I always think about it. There's an analogy we used to use here on the floor, which is I don't ever try to be Batman, because if you're Batman, they're Robin, and no one wants to be Robin. So what I tend to do is I try to make them Batman, and I say, tell me your story, whilst I step to the side and become Alfred, and I give them the utility belt, the awesome car, the Bat Cave with all the cool toys and gadgets and all that stuff, and I just basically equip them to do whatever they were going to do already through that story and that compelling vision of themselves in the future.
All right, what feedback do you usually hear once people have taken the first step with you?
I think, again, it's just drawing from that lived experience. I feel like I've got a lot to share. I feel like I love being of service. I love being able to provide value. So I think the biggest thing that I hear time and time again is that they get a lot of value, and that the return on their time and that investment is there for them, even if it's just to get them to a point where they're okay to continue in their business. That for me is more rewarding than anything. Like, if I can convince people not to sell and to just make some tweaks and some subtle adjustments from a consulting standpoint to go back into their business with a newfound sense of control and identity around what they are and what they're not, beautiful. That's a win.
Very good. What transformations have you seen in founders after going through this process?
They start to take responsibility for their lot. They felt coming in that things were happening to them, and there was a sense of lack of control. And then when they go through the process afterwards, they feel like they're in the driver's seat again, and that they can start to get some of that momentum happening again, and that they don't have to do it all themselves. And we try to work with them to empower others to step up and to share the load a little bit more, because it's, as I said at the start, it's very lonely being a solo owner of a business or a founder. And I think how beautiful is it to be able to share your business with people who have been loyal and given you time? I think that succession planning, where you involve your team in the process and give them something to work towards, in my experience, has been nothing more beautiful to my journey than being able to share it with others. Like, it's a lonely place unless you can do that. So that I would be encouraging every business owner to look internally before they look externally for investment.
Cool. How do you continue to support them beyond the transaction?
It's like it's a relationship. So it's just to be there as a guide, a mentor, a support, a sympathetic ear, and to really hold them accountable to what they said that they wanted and that compelling vision for the future. And if they get off track, to gently guide them back on track and ensure that they stay true to the picture they painted and that they're painting with the right colors.